Hey guys, what is up? Welcome to what I believe is episode 5 of creating a game in Java, and I put together this fancy little notepad thing of what we need to do, and my computer's running slow for some reason. But I put together this little fancy list, put it together in notepad so it's all nice. Hopefully you guys can see that. Format the font. Let's bump the size up a bit. Let's double the size for you. Okay, hopefully you can see that at least. But what we're going to do is we're going to go through this list real quick so we know exactly what we need to do at the the most basic kind of element of everything. So these are just some of the different classes that we're going to have. We have stationary enemies, movable enemies, a controller, a render, and a world. And each of these kind of comes together and serves a fairly important purpose. We have the world, which is going to hold all the information in terms of our ship, our enemies, the walls, and it's probably going to be in charge of loading the levels for us and for the beginning of our game. That might even get abstracted away into its own class, depending on how kind of big and in-depth we go with this tutorial. I don't think it would be a bad thing if we dove in that deep. In one of the old games I played around with, I actually built a kind of level loader where you could create your own files, and it would load a game based off of the file that you had created. So that's always possible. And then we have a world renderer, and that is in charge of drawing the world. So the world renderer is actually going to need to have an instance of the world, because the world renderer is going to need the ship and the enemies and the walls, and the ship is actually not going to be in an array. So actually let me take that out, because we only need one ship, because that's going to be our ship. But to draw the world, we're going to need a camera object and, of course, a sprite batch, because we've played around with sprite batches, not so much with cameras. So that'll be a fun little learning experience. In specific, if anyone's curious, it's going to be an orthographic camera. So you can look into that. And for debugging purposes early on, we will be using a shape renderer. That's very performance intensive, and putting it in a final game would be kind of crazy, so we're not going to do that. But yeah, the world render does need access to the world's objects to draw them, so it needs the ship, it needs the enemies, and it needs the walls to know their positions and stuff, so where to draw everything and what we've got. The controller is going to be in charge of taking keyboard and mouse input, and when we deal with phones, it's also going to control the touch input and stuff like that. If we really wanted to, we could use the accelerometer on a phone. So that's always a thought. We're going to have an input processor, and it's going to need access to the world's objects, because it needs to say ship dot set velocity to XYZ. So based on what buttons we've got pushed down, So if we need the W, we have the W pushed down on the keyboard, that we need to set the Y velocity to make the ship go up. Then we're going to have movable entities. I think the easiest way to do this is we're going to have some base classes and interfaces and stuff, and these are going to and the ship and enemies are kind of going to implement and extend those classes however we feel is the best way to go about it. And then we have stationary entities like the wall, and we might make stationary enemies, so I don't know whether I might consider those movable entities, and then just deal with kind of enemy AI inside of each different type of enemies class. We'll see how I decide to go about doing that, but that's also very possible. So yeah, we've got the basis of what we've got, of what we need. So I suppose we can just go from there. Today, maybe, I don't know if we're going to have time to get some actual graphics to the screen yet, but we can start working on these kind of abstract classes and interfaces. So yeah, let's go ahead and start working on that and just see where it takes us. So let's actually, I like doing this in Package Explorer when I do this part, but yeah, create a new folder, and we'll call this models. Model being based off of the MVC programming style, which is what we'd like to follow with this game. Games kind of make it hard to follow that, but the better we can follow that, the easier that this is going to be to maintain and build off of. So we'll just call it model, like that. And we'll create a new class and call it entity. And so we've got this public class entity, and I'm thinking that this should be our interface, maybe? And because if we look between a stationary entity and a movable entity, they all have a couple things in common. They have their position and their collision, and actually width and height even. So we might want to consider all that stuff. So I suppose we can say that it needs to have a protected vector to position, and Command Shift O will import that. Oh, actually, wait. Only public, static, and final are permitted. For an interface. Crap. Let's go with public abstract. Can I do that? Public abstract interface? Can I do that? And then can I make it protected? Is that okay? No, that's not okay still. Okay, how do I want to go about doing this that makes it the cleanest way? Public abstract class. Can I say that? Okay. Yeah. I'm like still not thinking very well. So we do need a vector to position. Alright, now we have it all set to go. So we can say protected, right? Yes, we can. And we've got a protected is a keyword modifier that isn't used very often. It's in between public and private. Basically anything that extends this class can use any of these things. So that makes it kind of nice. Vector to, actually, we're going to have a float width and a protected float height and a protected rectangle, and we're going to call this bounds because that's going to be like our bounding box. And then we want to import the math.rectangle from GDX, and then rectangle get bounds. So we're going to make some inner, can we do this? Oh, we need to add the abstract modifier. Okay. So then we need to add some of these so that our classes have to implement them. Abstract void set bounds rectangle. Actually, I suppose that we could, I mean, we could technically go ahead and handle all this now since it's all going to be the same. So why don't we actually do that? Return bounds. I mean, it's going to be easy if we just go ahead and do it now, like this, and then deal with the other classes later. We need to get rid of the abstract and set. This needs to be public, and this also needs to be public. And all these are actually going to be public, and it's not spaced out well. Public, what do we, float get height. Actually, I don't know why I'm doing all this when, I don't know if you guys know this, but if you actually right click and go to refactor, I think is where it is, source, it's under source, and I think it's generate getters and setters, and we can select all, and they're going to be public, and we're going to insert that after bounds, and we go ahead and generate method comments. Yeah, so there, and it even generates the Java doc for us, which is kind of nice of it. It seems a little messy in its current state, because it kind of is. But if you didn't know that you can generate the getters and setters like that, it's a really handy thing to do if you already started putting your class together without doing that, and then you realize you needed getters and setters. Yeah, you get the idea. Let's look. Is there anything else that we can do with this? No. So let's go ahead and extend that and create a new class. Superclass browse entity, and then we're going to call it movable entity. Inherited abstract methods. Yeah, that should be everything we need. And so the movable ones are actually going to have, this is also going to be abstract, but this is going to have more vector 2s, and I didn't really explain what a vector 2 is. A vector 2 is just something that holds an x and a y position, so it's holds an x and a y coordinate, so it's something in 2D space. You can use it to hold velocities or to hold positions, stuff like that, and we're going to actually call this one velocity. And then we're going to have to import that protected float speed, because that is going to control how fast it is compared to other relative things. And actually, I completely forgot a very important part of our game that needs to be in an array, and that is bullets. And that actually is going to be ships and enemies. Ship, bullets, and enemies. Alright. So we don't forget. So we can keep track of this kind of stuff. So we've got the protected float speed. What else did I say? I was just looking at it. We've got the height, we've got the width, we've got the rectangle, we've got the speed, we've got the velocity, we've got the position. And we need this. So I suppose we can go ahead and actually create some of these abstract void advance float delta. Okay, this is what we're going to call when we want to move our object when we want to advance it, and tell it to go somewhere. And actually, we need to generate. Actually, I don't know if you're supposed to put your abstract methods before or after your actual methods to make neater code, but we need to generate the getters and setters for this stuff. So vector2 get velocity. My goodness, I can't type tonight. And then we need to set the velocity, so public void set velocity, and that's going to be vector2 velocity. This dot whoops, I am messing everything up. This dot velocity equals velocity. Next getter and setter, we're actually, the speed should be a constant. So that's actually going to be in the constructor. So movable entity float speed, and that should be it. And we're going to call super speed. Actually, no, we aren't going to call super speed. What am I thinking? Well, we are going to need to create a new rectangle? Or no, we're going to have to send the position and the width and the height. So actually, inside of entity, let's go ahead and create a public constructor here. So we've got a public entity, which is going to take a vector2 position and a float width and a float height. And we're going to say this dot position equals, this is just basic object creation stuff in case you don't know what I'm doing. This dot width equals width. And it's kind of going to run like a train where you're going to have your ship, and it's going to call the superconstructor for movable entity, which is going to call the superconstructor for entity. So we're all the way here. And then bounds is going to equal a new rectangle with a position dot x, position dot y. So now we can see exactly how that vector2 works. It just holds an x and a y. Literally, that's what it does. There's a whole lot more to it. Like if we actually looked at the class, we can see that there's quite a few methods in terms of we've got a set and we've got a subtract, which is going to be very important. And add is going to be very important. Dot is probably not going to be too fairly important for us. The multiply one, is going to be fairly important. Distance will be for AI kind of stuff. The toString method, not so much. The temp is definitely going to be very important. We'll get to that later when it kind of comes to us, because it's going to be a mess. The angle is going to be very important for us, because that way we can automatically have our ship rotate to an angle, which reminds me that our ship needs to actually control these actually need a rotation, I suppose. Yeah, they probably should have a rotation. So, yeah. So we've got all this. This needs a protected float rotation. Speed rotation. Whoa, and I need to say that it's float. Goodness gracious. Okay. And we need a float width and a float height. And our entity also takes a vector to position. And with that we can say super position height. No, it was width first. Width and height. Alright, so that's that, and then we can just say this dot velocity equals, actually we don't need to take the velocity, do we? But we do need the speed. And the rotation. Alright, so data management, we're slowly kind of solidifying everything, very slowly, just making sure that things are as they should be. Is undefined for default constructor, must define an explicit constructor. And why is it highlighting that? Okay, I just had to save it. Okay. We are good. We need the advance, which I'm trying to think if the enemies need to have access to the ship. They actually might. Yeah, actually, I suppose that this should be handled in kind of an enemy sort of thing, because they're going to need to actually have the ship for tracking purposes, for AI work. So we've got the velocity, the rotation, and the rotation is going to need public float get rotation return rotation. I'm not liking the way I have this set up right now. It's subject to change for sure, because we're going to start getting kind of deep into inheritance soon, and I don't want to just make it one long inheritance base, which is kind of what it's turning into. The enemies are going to all have to be based off of a single class, which is going to be directly going to inherit from this class. So enemies are going to be 1, 2, 3, 4th generation is what I'm going to call it. I don't know what the technical term is exactly for it, but alright, so we've got this now. I suppose that's not terrible. A ship can be directly taken from this, and that'll be pretty much perfect and will give us exactly what we need. Let's see. Yeah, let's just go ahead and create a new class. And this one's going to be called enemy, and it's public abstract enemy extends move, just what we've been doing the whole time. And it needs this. Oh, perfect. It added it for us. Let's see if it's going to need anything else. I'm trying to think here. think that that should be all it needs, but then there are going to be a few more abstract. Wait, whoops. Yeah. Can I actually say public abstract? Is it alright to do? Public abstract void. I'm not sure if this is alright, but delta and ship. And we're going to need an error because ship doesn't exist yet. So there we go. We've got our enemy class, and let's create a new class. This one's going to be called ship, and this is not going to be abstract, and it is going to extend movable entity. And extend is not a keyword, it's extends. And this is going to need a fancy constructor. And we're actually going to do a set it up different. Vector2 position, width, height, rotation, and speed. Whoops. Got a little bit ahead of myself and forgot to put the right values in front of them. But we got what we needed. Alright, I think all that should be correct. Alright, so everything outside of this handles everything else for us. And the inheritance is actually going to be a whole lot more important with the enemy stuff. And we'll actually probably end up adding quite a bit to this than what it is right now. But it'll just be as we need it. We'll play around with it and dibble-dabble. Alright, so we can save this. And now enemy won't give us an error because ship actually exists. And we don't need to import it because it's in the same package here. It's in the model package. Alright, so actually now that this is, for the most part, set up and out of the way, we can actually, do we have a game screen set up? Screens. Oh, that's what it was. It was game. Okay, so this implement screen, so we've got our show method, and in our show we're actually up here. We're going to have to say Angry Masons game, and then just like we've been doing this whole time, this dot game equals game. Not a period, but a colon. And we're going to need a world, and we're going to get an error because that doesn't exist. We might just do the world and then end at that tonight. But you guys won't mind that, I'm sure. We'll keep going as things happen. But what do I want to call this? Let's just go ahead and new. Should I right click here? Yeah. New folder, and we're going to call this one, what to call it, view. Again, continuing the whole MVC pattern that we've got going on. And we're going to create a new class and call this class world. And we can, now that that exists, we can import world. Whoops, not import the box2D one. You want to import ours. So import world from what we've done, not the box2D one, because we aren't doing that. Let's go ahead and create the constructor real quick. This is going to be a public world, and it's going to take Angry Masons game, I think. That might be completely unnecessary, but and I don't know why I started typing that there. Angry Masons game, and this dot game equals game. Do our imports, and we're shaking like bacon. Let's create some arrays. Did I spell that right? Array of, actually, let's just say a ship S. We won't worry about the arrays with the enemies yet. And on the creation, we're going to say S equals new ship. It takes an X and a Y, so we're going to say GDX dot graphics dot get width divided by 2, so we're going to put it kind of in the center. Comma, oh, actually, gdx dot graphics dot get height, and we'll divide that by 2, and then that goes there. And it is jumping my cursor all over the place, which is really not helping me. And that's why I'm having issues, because it put that one right there. And we need the width is going to be 1, and the height is going to be 1, and the rotation is going to be 0, and the speed is going to be 5. And we need to import vector. And boom, we now have a ship set up that does absolutely nothing. But if you look, we can do S dot, and we have access to a whole bunch of stuff that we've actually set up ourselves already. So, you know, that makes it pretty nice and easy that now when we make a new class, it already has all that available to us, which saves us a whole lot of time. Let's see, what else do we need to do with the world? The world is going to be in charge of updating stuff. It's going to hold all of our information. So we actually need a getter and setter for the ship. So public ship get ship return ship, and then public void. No, we don't want to set ship because this is supposed to hold our ship. And actually, I named it S, and that's bad of me. I should just go ahead and call it ship. There we go. That's ship's easy enough to type. I don't need to really shorten it to S. What else does our world need to do? Really right now, because we haven't implemented any of the enemies yet, for the most part, this is it. It's also going to control, when we get into rendering and graphics like that, it's going to hold everything for us, which is going to be pretty handy-dandy, so that we can get the ship, which means if something has access to the ship, you know, then the graphics, we can say ship dot get position, and that returns a vector too, so we can just say dot x, and boom, we've got the x position of our ship without even having to do anything. And what's it telling us? Insert assignment operate. Oh, because I need to say like float x equals that, right? Unreachable code, because it's after the return statement, so there's no point in having it. If I did it up here, it would work though. So I could say float x equals ship dot get position dot x, and that would be perfectly fine for us to do when we're drawing out our images and stuff like that. When we say ship dot get bounds, this is pretty nice because we can ask it if it contains a rectangle or something of an enemy. So if we have an enemy, say that it's just, we can say enemy dot get bounds, which isn't going to work yet, and actually instead of contains, we would actually probably use something more like overlaps, which is a method for rectangles, and it tells us whether or not they're overlapping. So it gives us pretty basic collision detection right off the bat for us. So now that we've kind of started setting up everything, we haven't gotten to render anything yet. I think I'm going to go ahead and end this here. It's not a fun place to leave off, but I'm tired and I'm going to be at work late tomorrow night, and so I'd like to get a little bit of rest. And I'll probably be playing Borderlands late tomorrow night because that comes out. So that's going to be exciting. Everybody loves some Borderlands too. But yeah, we're starting to build a full-fledged game, and it's getting nitty-gritty, but yeah, it's not bad. Let's run it real quick, and we will see that absolutely nothing has changed. But actually, for the sake of change, and I forgot to mention, I did get the text to work. I can go over that real quick so I can show you guys what I did. And if I hit play, nothing will happen. But actually, real quick, let's go to our main. It's not in our main. Let's go to our Angry Mason and change the version from 0.1 to 0.2 because we deserve it. Because that's what we are. We're awesome like that. But if we go into our screens here and look at the main menu, I created a label, which is another part of the scene 2D UI. And basically, right after all the button stuff, which is right here, I created a label style, and it took the white font, and it takes a color, and it takes create a new label, and it takes the string, and it takes the label style. So the label style handles the font and the color. Then I set the X to 0, which would be the bottom left-hand corner. And I set the Y to right above the button, just a little bit above it. And I set the width to the entire width of the game screen, and I set the alignment to center. So I have a label that stretches all the way from the left to the right. And it's a little bit above the button, and it's centered along there, because that's probably the best way I found out to center text. Because other than that, I don't know any actual methods that return the width of the font and the text that you're using. So for me, that was the best bet. And if I run this real quick again, you can see that the font is actually centered without me having to do any real math, which is awesome. You can see it's nice, it's centered. We can bump up the font to make it bigger later, but for now, this will suffice. But yeah, we've got our fancy button, and yeah, we're all set now. Awesome, guys. Thanks for sticking through this. Another kind of dry episode because we're not doing anything fun yet. In terms of, getting to play something and actually our work going towards anything, really. So, that'll be coming hopefully next episode. I think we might get to delve into it a little bit. But, I will see you guys later. And, hopefully you guys enjoyed. Thanks for watching. And, if you guys share this video at all, I would very much appreciate it, because that's really how I've gotten almost all my views now. So if you guys did that for me, it would be greatly appreciated. But I will see you guys later, and good night.